All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through Attacker Ghost Stories, the presentation that I've done at ShmooCon, as well as CarolinaCon, Area 41, and RVSEG. This presentation has actually been updated quite a few times, but most of the core content is the same. So if you've seen it at other cons, you'll still get one or two things out of it, but it's pretty much the same. Um, I just think that a lot of these things haven't been talked about in in most organizations, and providing something online will hopefully give a very easy way to get back to this content. Um, Not that any of the cons haven't done that already, but it might be useful for a more face-to-face type deal. So let's get going. I'm going to try and share this out. I can't see the screen after I share this out, so we're just going to see how this works. So I'm going to do screen share, share my desktop, go play. All right. So, Attacker Ghost Stories, mostly free defenses that give attackers nightmares. All right. So this is a little bit about me. My name is Rob Fuller, Mubix, father, husband, Nova Hacker. If you don't know about Nova Hackers, go to novahackers.com. We have a blog spot that shows our meetings. Basically, it's a monthly group of like-minded individuals, and we all play by the Fight Club rules, basically. So if you join the club, you basically have to present as soon as you join. So sometimes we give leeway that you present on the second or third time you've gone to an event, but usually not. So also, I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years, doing everything from explosives to computers. And so that's a little bit about me. Why are we here? So transitioning, like my segue, transitioning into this, I always ask why are we here? Why not like as a society or an organism, but why InfoSec? Why hacking? And I think that a lot of people have a lot of different reasons, obviously. But why I'm here, why I like doing this, is because I like seeing places get better. Some people have called me a internet tree hugger or a security tree hugger, and I actually like that term. So whenever I go to somewhere, I like to make it better, and that's just, I'm weird like that. So first off, we're going to talk about memory corruption bugs. Memory corruption bugs, for the most part, have been a cycle of patches. Every Tuesday or every Monday of every month, you go, hey, I got all these patches, I'm going to do all these patches. Or your vulnerability scanner guy goes, hey, you're missing a bunch of patches on these, go patch these patches. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's a vicious cycle, and it's never ending. Like, you can have an application that can have a vulnerability, and that application, even stuff like XP, might never get that patch because that application has no longer been in service, or the guy who first developed it stopped, or the girl who first developed it stopped. So how do you fix all these things? How do you get up? And a lot of smart people came up with the idea of fixing it at a different layer. So what do I mean by that? Well, when you do things of memory corruption bugs, so buffer overflows, heap sprays, and all of these other things, there are infinite amount of different initial attack vectors, different ways and different applications to attack. But the problem is, once you start that attack, once you get to point A and the application breaks, you're then going into a state where that application is still in an operating system, or a common operating system, that the steps have to be pretty similar after that. Now, I probably will get pushback on that, but the concepts at least are very similar. So bypassing ASLR, there are a certain number of steps, and everyone has talked about how to bypass ASLR that you have to do. and bypassing DEP and bypassing all of these other different protections. But usually they're in specific patterns, and there's tons of trainings from Black Hat to every other conference on the planet in security on exploit development, and they all go through all of these same steps. That's where EMET came in. So a bunch of smart people came up with this tool called EMET. It's completely free from Microsoft, and what it does is applies a bunch of different protections on not the actual patch problem, but onto the steps that the attacker takes afterwards, right? So, for instance, and before I go on, it's also deployable by GPO. It does log in and it's free. So, for instance, the system mitigations on the top bar of it are all of the ones that we kind of already know and have used in the past. DEP, Struction Exception Handler, I forget what OP is, but then ASLR. Those protections we kind of know about and is built into systems since Vista, and you can see that, right? Application mitigations are different. Those applications have to be applied, those protections have to be applied by the manufacturer, and if you're not even getting good patches out, then how can you ever expect them to get up on these different mitigations? So EMET, what it does is forces these protections onto applications. Now that brings up a good point in the fact that when you force these different protections onto these applications, the problem is that some of them aren't ready or sometimes break. That's why EMET is a completely opt-in application. You have to actually apply any protection that EMET has onto that application. So when you first install it, I've gone to organizations who have deployed EMET completely, and we're like, hey, I got owned completely from this weird exploit that came out on IE. It's really old, but I still get owned, but I had EMET. What the heck? Well, when you looked at their actually applied settings, they hadn't put any settings applied. So again, EMET is completely opt-in. The great thing is with EMET 4.0 and above, you have this wonderful set of tested, quote-unquote, known good sets of application rules that say, hey, most of these things don't get broken when you apply all of these protections, X, Y, Z. Great. Now, if you deploy EMET 4.0 or above, and you apply all of these default settings on the 5 major targets of phishing, you're pretty well protected. You have Word, you have Adobe Reader, Internet Explorer, Java, and what was the other one? Excel or something like that. Flash. So if you apply all of these things, you have those protections on those and more. But what about EMET bypasses? We've heard that EMET has been bypassed. Oh no. Well, and there's 2 great research papers that I've seen on bypassing EMET. But the problem is with these papers is that they're really well written, really well done. Nothing against either one of the authors, but they usually focus on a single exploit and how to bypass EMET for that single exploit, and usually not all of the, or even a subset of the protections that EMET puts onto these different applications. So usually it's 1 or 2, not a complete book. So if you have EMET and you apply the default settings, you are most likely going to be safe enough for now against any of these bypasses. Now, as the saying goes, attackers get better, and they will eventually find ways around all of the bypasses. But guess what? If you apply EMET, you are going to be light years above any of the rest of the targeting, and most of that mass malware that doesn't care as long as they get a few shells that are not going to hit you. They're going to hit all of the other people who don't have EMET. Again, once EMET starts to become more commonplace, these bypasses are going to become more commonplace. But the problem is that while exploits are not easy, but more common to find, these paths of exploitation are a lot harder and a lot more rare. So they have to bypass all those. All right, but what about Java? You said Java was protected, but guess what? It's really not. A lot of the Java bugs are non-memory corruption, so EMET is completely out of the protection range or barrier to entry on some of these. A good majority of them, actually. So what do you do? Well, most people have said, hey, just patch all of them. Just patch all of the Javas. But the person who said this has never met or installed ArcSight. Just saying. Or IIS or any of the other applications that any of the CERT uses or any of the other developers use, or specifically like anything they need a specific version. But what about disabling the plugin in GPO? Then none of the Windows systems will have the Java plugin installed. Well, guess what? You're going to have a freaking developer uprising or a project manager uprising when they can't create a meeting, like GoToMeeting or Citrix or any of the other ones that are out there I can't think of. You're not going to be a very popular person. But let's just upgrade everyone to Java 7 update 200, so we have that awesome block list functionality or whitelist functionality. And guess what? If you have people up to this point already, you normally don't have to worry about the actual exploits because you have a good patching process. Like, if you can get them up to this point, why don't you just keep getting them up to that point? So the problem is you're always going to have people who are way behind. Applications that require ancient pieces of Java. Or, let's just go the complete route, like the world is on fire route, and say, hey, everyone just should install Linux and we all are good and it's the end of all days. Let's just do it. All right. Now that we know none of those work, I'm going to show you something interesting. This is an Internet Explorer user agent. Why am I showing you this? Because when I send a phishing email, as an attacker, I send a phishing email, and I ask someone to go to a link. This is the first thing I see. I see what link I sent them in a GET request and this long string of things telling me everything that I'd ever want to know about their Internet Explorer, that they have 4.0 installed, that they had 2.0 installed, 3.5 installed, Media Center, InfoPath, Chrome Page, all of these other things awesomely installed on their application, and it makes me so eager to target every single one of them. But what if I have a Java signed applet? What if I'm using the Java signed applet attack? Well, Internet Explorer can't execute Java. It doesn't know how to. It's a C program, right? So what it does is passes off any Java code over to the Java plugin, and the Java plugin says, okay, got it, sir. I'm going to go get that Java code and execute it. And then this is what happens. Specifically, look at the middle one, Java 1.6.0.26. When I see that in my web logs, I see get main page of phishing-email.html, and then the very next request is get my awesomely signed Java applet.jar, and then this user agent. Awesome. Now I know that there's no protections on them, or I can submit different jars, and if I can set up a dynamically coded web application that looks at the user agent and does things based on requests. We know that that's possible because there's a bunch of mobile websites that see you're an iPhone or whatever that do this. If I make a dynamic page that looks at Java user agent and then applies an attack based on those user agents, then I'm golden. Then I can make all of these things automatically do all these great things and exploit you based on the user agent. and now I know exactly what exploit to send it to you, and I'm good. But I'm a tree hugger. I want things to get better. I want things to go on and move into the graceland of being a safe place on the internet for me and my family and my organization. So switching this all in on its head, what if I block the Java user agent at the proxy, or at least the one that are out of date? What then? Won't all of the developers go in an uprising again? Well, not really. I'm going to skip this one, and I'm just going to skip this one because if they can't see this code, then they're not going to be exploited. So if a developer goes on and says, hey, I need access to this site for Java, that's great. You can apply that and be done. But what if you block all the Java user agents and you say, I'm going to exclude from this block these domains? So how do you do that? If you go into your organization and pull a report or do a grep for 30 days worth of logs and say, hey, which sites, which domains did my users go to with the Java user agent pull? So that means that the Java plugin on these web browsers inside of your organization went out and pulled some kind of Java code and executed it. I've done this at large organizations, multinational organizations, and usually that list comes down to a number less than 10. It's usually GoToMeeting, something on Citrix, something on WebEx, a few on Sun and Oracle, and all of the other websites that invoke things using Oracle or Sun's domains, and that's it. Usually it's really small. So all you have to do is say, okay, except for these specific domains, I'm going to block all Java user agents. Great. Now you've blocked every single exploit that goes on your organization, and you've also, via that report, identified different domains that people have used as phishing for your organization. So now, not only have you implied or applied a protection onto your organization for future exploits, you've also identified some intrusions that you might not have noticed otherwise. So that's free, just like EMET. We're going to go through a bunch of these. And if you really want to get into it, the attacker can't modify the user agent pre-exploit. There have been rumors or comments that this is false. I've tried a number of different ways to figure out how to get this to change. Still have not been successful. But I'm open-minded. If someone has a way for this to be done, I will remove all of this part of the slides and tell people I'm wrong, but I haven't seen it yet, so I'm going to keep this in here. Oh yeah, and it protects on SSL too. The reason it does this is when your proxy sees a SSL connection to a website, it does this using a connect header. So as you can see in the middle of the page, it says connect to www.java.com over 443. Then you see in the connect statement under client, it says user agent blah 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 Java. That's the user agent for Java going over the proxy in the connect statement. So if you apply this inside of your proxy to block things on the connect statement as well, you are then blocking everything, including the things that are encrypted. So if your attacker goes all kinds of fancy, gets an SSL cert or steals one, and sends his exploit and sends his phishing page inside of an SSL tunnel, you still got him. You still can protect against that signed applet or that signed code or that Java exploit. Oh yeah, and it protects Macs too. So I put this in there to remind me to say that the attacks on Macintosh and Macs and OS X and all those are usually in Flash or Java. And if I'm attacking an organization that I don't know what the mix is in Macs or Windows machines, and I'm going in a little bit blind, I'm usually going to go after the Java signed applet attack, because that specific attack uses a piece of Java code that I can put both Mac OS X and Windows-based exploits or code in, so that no matter what I get, I can still execute. So if I have this block on the Java user agent, your Mac clients inside and your Mac users are still going to use that Java user agent when they connect to the page. So when they go through the proxy, it's going to say no. So your users will get phished. They'll go to the website, nothing will happen, and que sera, sera, it's all over. Cool stuff. All right, so that's how we protect against both the client's attacks and the Java-based attacks. Includes watering holes and stuff like that. So moving on to stuff that we know about but we do all wrong. And this is just from experience in organizations. First off is antivirus. And since I can't see you all, I normally ask this question inside of a presentation hall. How many people actually look at the successfully removed antivirus logs? How many people even centrally manage those logs, like send them somewhere? Not many. And if you don't, you got a problem, because if you miss that PW dump on an IIS box or an internal website or an internal domain controller, you're losing your chance to detect possible intrusions, because it got there somehow, right? It moved onto that machine, not magically, not by some kind of byte collection universe. It just worked. Someone put that on there, and it had to have gotten there somehow. Well, so basically what I'm saying here is do us a favor, and in your AV, make it send alerts or higher alerts or more critical alerts when it detects hacker tools, because 9 times out of 10, those got there somehow, even if it's just an internal employee being stupid. Next up is logon alerting. And again, I'd ask the room, how many people do actual successful authentication alerting or logging? Not many, usually, is the answer. So let me tell you about one tool that is for pay. So it's the only one I'll tell you about in this whole presentation that's for pay, but it's the only one that I know that does this, so that's why I'm talking about it. AD Audit Plus is a tool that takes all of the logs from all of your different Windows systems, the authentication logs at least, and says, okay, if user X is logged into 4 systems faster than 30 seconds, or if anyone in this organizational unit is logged into anything, anyone in this domain is logged into multiple systems at one time, or logged in past these hours, or a number of different rules, you can say, send an alert, either email or a bunch of different methods. And the reason I bring this up is that in one case, there was an organization that had this, and I was really impressed because they caught me within a few minutes and like 30 minutes of doing my phishing email. So I sent the phishing email in, and then got all of the systems, and people clicked stuff, and I was golden. They didn't have Java user agent blocking or EMET, and I got to a bunch of systems. And once I started laterally moving, this set off a bunch of alerts saying that I was using the local admin account on a number of different systems in a quick succession. And then I found the domain admin and started pivoting there. But while I was doing that, they had already gotten alerted, and they were already on my trail trying to track me down and kick me off. The crazy thing is, in this one tool, they were able to change all the passwords that I had compromised and they'd found in this AD Audit Plus with a few touches of the button, and I was kicked out. I was gone. Like, I lost all access to these systems in a matter of hours, less than that. which is really fast for an intrusion, right? Anyways, so moving on, HIPS. I've pen tested, like I said, a lot of organizations, and most of them have some sort of host intrusion prevention system turned on and in what is called promiscuous mode. And what promiscuous mode means is, like, it's basically an IDS instead of an IPS. It really doesn't block anything. It says it's going to block stuff. It goes, hey, I would have blocked X, but it really doesn't. And the problem with this is that most organizations are afraid that this is going to break stuff, and it will if you turn all of the rules on. Well, how do you know which rules to turn on? So my answer to that is, well, ignore like trying to figure out all of the correct rules or things that'll break stuff. Just go after the ones that are hacker tools, like we talked about in AV. If there is a, oh, we got someone joining that I can hear myself. I thought I muted everyone. Anyways, so if you can turn off all of the rules and put it in promiscuous mode, but turn on the prevention of use of any hacker tools, you are a step ahead of the game. Like, we're going back to the PW dump instance. If you make it so that if someone tries to password dump the hashes from your local system or a system that this HIPS is installed on, it just blocks it, guess what? Now you're alerting, and you stopped them from ever getting hashes. You stopped them from getting that lateral movement. This is great. So just turn on the category hacker tools or hacker stuff, right? Then you're good. Next up is vulnerability scanning. I see too much of this. At the organizations I used to pen test, I saw a bunch of times the organization will have been doing vulnerability scanning and been, sending those reports off to get things fixed, but never really telling the parts of the organization what to fix exactly, or what's the most important. It's usually they're relying on whatever grades the vulnerability scanning companies gave it. Now, they do put a lot of work into figuring out what these things are and how critical they are, but they're usually wrong, at least from my experience and my point of view. Because in my point of view, I'm an attacker, and I usually go after things I can exploit. Well, if there's a vulnerability, a critical vulnerability, and it's CVS 10, but there's zero exploit available for it, there's nothing available out there, and there's nothing been seen in the wild, why is it a 10? Like, why would I push for maintenance windows and spend overtime and all of these other things to get these things fixed when no one's ever going to be able to exploit it, except for the original guy who found it, and maybe the vendor who has the code that they submitted. So what we need to start doing across the board is vulnerability reporting. And what I mean by this is taking all of the results and going through it and saying, this is stupid, 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 this is critical, this is on a system that's getting reverted next Tuesday, I don't care about it. This is stupid, this is stupid, this is stupid. Oh, there's a low vulnerability on one of my critical infrastructure pieces that allows someone to read all of the memory. Maybe I should put that up into the high category because that's a critical system. Because your vulnerability scanning companies are not going to know what critical systems you have. They're not going to know how to categorize them or how your setup is set for risk, right? So, but what if I'm a mom and pop store? What if I'm a vulnerability one-man show? Get your pen testers involved. At the end of every cycle, every time you have a pen test come in and show all of the crazy red that is going to get you in trouble, take 20 minutes of that call. Say, hey, would you mind looking at a vulnerability report? Just giving me the heads up, or the team the heads up on what you would go after. Now, taking that 20 minutes is going to save you tons of money by making it so that you know via this pen tester what he would go after, or he or she would go after, what the attackers would go after if they had access to your systems, or at least ability to look, start pivoting inside your organization. What would the attacker go after? Ask your pen tester. They're going to know. Next up. Now this is a new one. I haven't actually talked about this at any of the other places I've given this talk, but it's a doozy. It's one of those that you would always say, hey, why didn't I think of that? So a lot of organizations buy typo squatting domains for a number of reasons, for brand management as well as for phishing. So if your organization buys domains based on typo squatting, and what I mean by typo squatting is make it so that you miss a G in Google, or you miss an O in Google, or whatever your organization's name, something wrong with your keyboard if you mistype it. And this is really used a lot for phishing. A lot of times you'll find people using domains that have been registered with really weird names, but really close to the original names. So what I've seen a couple organizations do is use a tool called URL Crazy that develops a list of all of these typo squatted domains based on the domain list that you give it. Take the CSV output from that and import it and apply it inside of their internal DNS servers. And why they do that is basically so that they don't have to buy all of these domains. So when someone sends a phishing email in, the attacker sends a phishing email via the typo squatted domain. The client tries to get out, and their proxy or their DNS inside says, well, it's 127.0.0.1, or even better, put it to a phishing page, like says, hey, you've just been phished. Please report the email that gave you this link, or please report the website that gave you this link. Then you have an awesome collection of intelligence, and then the bad guy has no idea what went wrong. He has the domain, he owns the domain, then why didn't he get any responses from the phish? He also has no idea what domains you have internally. So if you buy all of these domains, an attacker can know which ones you owned, and they won't buy those, right? Well, if you have everything internally, they're never going to know which ones you've typo squatted yourself. So they're going to try and typo squat, and guess what? It's never going to work. Now, one of the downfalls to this idea is that you still will have users that are at home that aren't going through correct proxies, still get exploited, but you're cutting costs so much, and you're limiting risk so much, and you're actually giving a bad guy an aneurysm by so much that it's well worth it. It's well worth the small risk of your work from home employees being the problem. All right. Next up is crowdsourcing security. So we kind of started with that with the ending of the last slide. What I mean by crowdsourcing security is basically giving starting a program for a way to take all of the people who are getting phished in your organization and turn them into basically IDSs, make them work for you. So how do you do this? You start rewarding the top users for reporting malicious or fishy content. So if someone sends a phishing email in and two users report it out of the 10 that got phished, you give them points. And at the end of a quarter or end of the month, you make those points worth something. You say, all right, the top 10 users or the top 3 users that reported things like someone trying to tailgate into the organization, or someone sending me a phishing email, they get an email from the CEO of the company. And this is a big point. If you don't make it a big deal out of it, it's going to not be a competition. People like recognition. So if you have the CEO or CSO of the company say, hey, these top users for the quarter for our security awareness, and you give each one of those a gift card for $150, and then $200 and $50 or whatever, however you want to break that out, and however much you want. you are making everyone in your organization into an amazing IDS. You're making it a competition that people want to do. They'll start looking in their freaking spam folder for phishing emails that they can report just so they can get points. So if you start this up, people are going to be more security aware than you could ever get with the stupid user awareness training flash slideshows that everyone pushes next on until they get stupid certificates so they can stop doing stupid stuff instead of their actual work. So at the last bullet point is the quarterly Think Evil games. And what I mean by this is there was actually one organization that I worked at that had this wonderful idea. In this organization, if you wanted to go to Facebook, you had to basically jump through 20 hoops to get there. You had to do an SSL tunnel over 443 and do all these things, and it was well known in the people who were tech savvy on how to do this. The problem was that we were doing it, right? It was not only a security violation, and something that should have been reported, but it was something that was something that everyone except for the security people knew about. So what they did was they enacted a quarterly Think Evil games, which is a quarterly day, one day, where you were able to report all of the ways that you bypassed security at our organization. Now, there are a ton of people who know all of these different ways. I guarantee that everyone on this or everyone listening to this video at any point in time has figured out a way to get to their home router or get to their music collection or something, which they weren't supposed to over the network, right? That was originally blocked. Now think about it from another point of view. If you were the security admin and someone came up to you and said, "Here's how I bypassed all of your stuff," wouldn't you take that as awesome knowledge and apply and try and fix it? And then maybe hire them, get them into somewhere where their talents can be appreciated instead of sent to HR. So the great thing about this quarterly Think Evil games was you got that one day where you could actually report things, and this was one day that was completely exempt from any kind of reprimand. So you can say, "Hey, I found all of these things. I found all these ways around. Please don't send me to jail." And they obviously gave you, a buy on that, right? So next up is the internal bug bounty program. Along the same lines of what I was just talking about, there's been plenty of times where you've put I guarantee everyone listening to this right now has put a tick mark in an application inside their organization and it broke. Did you report that? Probably not, because there's no place for you to report it to. It would cost you too much time at work to trace down or track down the person that actually owned that application, then work with them to try and fix it. That's why we need some kind of place where all of this raw information, all of this awesome talent and reporting and stuff needs to come to. So what you need to do is, in your organization, have inside of that email that goes out by the CSO or the CEO about the top, security awareness performance, say, "Here's how to email if you have any problems. spam@company.com or security@company.com." And inside that email, you also say, if you find any broken applications, please also report them to security_applications@company.com. If you don't make it easy and you don't put a person on the other end of that email address, yes, that's another employee that you're going to have to put on this. But if you don't put someone in there that will track things down and work on those, a project manager or some sort, an intern, then you're going to have problems. For example, I was doing a pen test on this one organization that had a great security awareness training program. They had a security team that was top-notch. The problem is they never responded to emails. They got all the phishing emails in, and they dealt with them as a security ticket and would and figure out how to block or how to stop or how to deal with the intrusion. But they didn't respond to the actual users. So when we sent a phishing email in, we got no responses back on code execution, but we got a few usernames and passwords when they went to the phishing website and entered their username and passwords. So we logged on to their Outlook web access, and we noticed that one specific guy, had reported the phishing email that we had sent them. Well, guess what? No response, right? So I already told you that. So what did we do? We sent him a response. He was asking if this was a legitimate email from the security team. And what did we do? We spoofed an email right back to him saying, yes, it was. Please click on the link and download the program and run it. Guess what he did? Downloaded the program and ran it. If you don't respond to your users about the things they are reporting, they will not report anymore, and someone might take advantage of it. And then finally, payout and gift cards, because, you know, blah, 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 blah. Moving on, this is my favorite vulnerability of all time. Has to be the #1 vulnerability that I love absolutely the most. The reason why it is because it's default in all Windows, all the way up to Windows 8.1. What it is basically Windows saying automatically detect the settings for the proxy. How it does this is by sending a broadcast out inside of its NetBIOS broadcast range, saying, hey, is there a computer anywhere around me that is named WPAD? Now, obviously, I have to be local to be able to attack this, but if I'm at an airport and you're in an airport and you have this setting turned on and my computer is named WPAD and you are on the same network as I am, guess what's going to happen? I now control all of your proxy settings. So I can say you're proxying through me, and once I have you proxying through me, I can control all of your traffic, including logins to VPNs, Outlook Web Access, and so forth. How do you protect against this? Very easily. First off, internally, you should null route the WPAD computer name. Say anything named WPAD in my organization goes to 127.0.0.1. For IPv6, make it WPAD to ::1. And then you can turn off NetBIOS resolution completely. Now, there's a tool called Responder made by Spider Labs and Laurent Gaff that exploits this very thing. It uses NetBIOS broadcast traffic to lie and say, yes, I'm WPAD. Yes, I'm whatever computer you're trying to access. Yes, I'm that. You really don't need NetBIOS internally unless you're running Windows 98. And normally, I look around a room and there's at least 1 or 2 people that are unfortunately raising their hands saying, yes, we still have Windows 98 systems in our organization. And I cry for them. And it's also kind of a privacy concern because NetBIOS is actually sending out traffic. Even if you're in incognito mode in your Chrome browser, when you do a HTTP whack and you forget the domain name or mistype the domain name or don't put the .com on the end of it, it's actually sending out the request string on NetBIOS. And when it's trying to preload stuff, it'll do the same thing. All right, moving on. Turn off DNS. Seriously. Believe me. Would I lie to you? All right, so I really actually mean turn off DNS. And what I mean by that is turn off DNS forwarding. There's no reason for your users inside of your organization to be able to ping Google. We've already turned off ICMP for most organizations going outbound. Why not turn DNS forwarding turn off? Because you really don't need it. If you have a web proxy, and most organizations do, and if you don't, you should get one. Like Squid, free. Go get one. It's free. Let your proxy do the DNS. Allow it to do DNS. Turn off Windows DNS forwarding for all of your organization, and guess what? You've completely disabled an entire segment, entire category of command and control. There's a lot of DNS-based command and control going on right now, and the only way it can get out is if it can do resolutions. Now, some have to do resolutions directly out, and you can block, and most organizations have already blocked TCP 53 and UDP outbound directly from anything but their DNS servers, and that's great. But if that C2 knows how to do resolution through DNS servers, then you still have to deal with this. And it's really, really easy to turn DNS off, at least for the forwarding, off in an organization, and make it so that all of the DNS resolution goes through the proxies. I've seen it actually work in very large organizations, multinational organizations. So everyone on the planet cringes at this part of the presentation, but I've seen it work, and it works really well. Next up is your passwords suck. Now everyone in security knows that passwords suck, but rarely do people do anything about it. And I don't understand that, and particularly these passwords. So if you don't know about these passwords, there's a presentation by Lara's company, and if you need pen testing, you should go talk to them. If one of these passwords don't work in your organization, I would be wholeheartedly surprised. Like specifically the welcome one, the one right in the middle on the left-hand side. I have seen welcome one at every single organization I've ever pen tested. Yes, it's in your organization too. And don't tell me it's not, because I guarantee there's at least one password in one spot that you can't audit right now. What I mean by that is basically even the places that do password auditing, they only do it on Windows. They don't do it on their routers. They don't do it on their Oracle databases. They don't do it on their MS SQL databases. They don't do it on their custom web applications that do passwords only in web forms that jump up and down and go hooray. So let's start doing more password auditing. And how do you do that? Like if you're a one-man shop like we talked about before, it's really a hard thing to do. But if you get your pen testers involved, like I said before, if you get your red teamers involved, they will jump for joy. They will sing for you if you ask them to do a password audit on your domain controller or anything. You say, hey, I'm going to give you admin access to such and such machine. I want you to do a password audit on it, please. It'll take them maybe 15 to 20 minutes, maybe an hour, to do one jaunt through the rocku.txt list, be done, and say, these accounts were easily cracked. And that's really what you're looking for. You're not looking to say, hey, can my 40 GPU awesome cluster of Bitcoin mining awesomeness can crack my password? No, ignore all of that. Go with the basics. Say, can rocku.txt, can the default rules of rocku.txt crack these passwords? If they cannot, then you are pretty much all the way there. All right, port forwarding honeypots. Normally I roll right through this because most organizations are not ready for honeypots. But if you do want to do a honeypot in your organization, to get it approved is really hard. I don't know if you've ever tried to take a CSO, give them a presentation on honeypots and say, yes, sir, we do want to install a vulnerable system inside of our network. Normally, you'll get laughed out the door. But if you can say, hey, if you have a public IP space, if you have a public website, spin up another VPS somewhere, just on Linode or anywhere, and say, I want to add a vulnerable software to the VPS, such as default credentials with MS SQL, or MySQL or anything else. Then you put sensors or whatever you want on it. And then you do a port forward from your main website using firewall rules to that vulnerable host that's outside on the internet. You then have a vulnerable host that you can go look at anytime you want that the attacker thinks is your main website. You're basically saying the port 1433 is port forwarded that's intended for this IP address, is port forwarded to this internet address that I have set up. And then you just block all other connections to that VPS other than the ones from your main IP. And now your attacker thinks he's on some kind of internal applications in your DMZ and starts trying to pivot around. And now you have all of these logs, all of these different things that you do on a honeypot without ever putting a vulnerable system anywhere near your organization. As long as you don't share passwords from real infrastructure to the VPS. All right. The big one. So if you really want to get serious about stuff, if you want to make it so that nobody can get through anywhere else, so EMET, Java proxies, all of that kind of stops at the authenticated splash proxy. And what do I mean by authenticated splash proxy? First off, you need a proxy. You need something that says, I'm going to proxy all of the web traffic going in and out. And to authenticate to this web proxy, you need to make it non-automatic. If you make it so that a web application requires authentication like NTLM, Windows authentication, the attacker is just going to add one line of code into his malware and says, if the proxy needs a proxy authentication, use the cache credentials. Then Windows is automatically going to take those cache credentials and reuse them when trying to get out. It's really that easy for an attacker if you use anything that is cached, like NTLM or BASIC. So if you make it a web form, it's not cached. It's in a cookie, which is much harder to bypass. It's specifically in an Internet Explorer cookie. Now, the other thing is make it something that is not immediately identifiable or guessable. If it's a username and password and a username and password field, make those field names different. So if you've ever done HTML, the user is never going to see these fields. They're actually in the background. You make it a U or an A or P or B. And oh, please, please, please block all of the uncategorized. So anything that, if you get categorization lists from anywhere, there's a bunch of free ones out there too. If you get categorization lists for websites, automatically set up blocking to uncategorized. Now, some organizations find this hard, especially marketing organizations or advertising organizations or lawyers. The reason why they find this hard is their employees and the users are constantly going to a bunch of different websites that are usually one-offs or uncommon or specifically uncategorized. So if you can't do uncategorized, that's fine. But what is this splash page? We've talked about the authentication part. The splash proxy is the next part. If it's a splash proxy, what you have is a page that shows up every time a website that someone wants to go to is uncategorized or unknown. So what you have, you can either go with a categorization list and make it only work on uncategorized, or if you go with the complete list, as the organization I used to work at did. So when I got to work, if I was the first one to work, for example, I would hit the splash proxy, or the splash page when I went to google.com. And when I went to google.com, I'd hit yes or no, and then I'd go on. The next person that came to work, because that splash proxy, that splash page would apply the yes or no to the domain whitelist, would not see that for google.com. They would see it maybe for Facebook if they went to Facebook. And I'll show you how this works. So they would see this. Now if I click block, it would actually not do anything. It's a placebo effect. You just not go to that page. It would redirect you to about blank. If I hit unblock, it would unblock it for the entire company. So you can actually put this into a psychological mind screwing with the employees. If you say, this domain is currently blocked, would you like to unblock it for the entire company? How many people in your organization have the confidence to push that button? So you're actually protecting by the organization by screwing with them pretty well. Now they will get used to it and they'll start clicking unblock, but still, any kind of command and control that tries to go out of your proxies are not going to have an easy time doing it. They're just not going to be able to do it at all, because this splash page is usually, if you design it using Flash, something that someone cannot bypass or someone cannot figure out automatically. And this proxy, what it does is actually applies the rule to allow it out. The organization I worked at that did this refreshed it every day, so you literally had a new list of allowed domains. Not a single domain was allowed at at midnight. And then going forward, that list got bigger and bigger, but by the end of the day, it was relatively big, and then it got refreshed. Well, that's really not doable for a company that's larger than the 200 employee one that I was at. So if you do this maybe on a monthly scale, then the average number of times this splash page comes up for any particular employee is maybe 1 or 2, unless they're doing some research on some really weird domains. You won't get it that often. And this stops all C2. Like, we've killed all of the DNS-based C2, and if we put the splash page in, we've now eliminated everything else. All right. So getting to the fun stuff. This is the part of that everyone likes of this presentation. The places where I've been caught. No, this is not a picture of me. This is slides about the different things that people put in, and I call them evil canaries. Other people call them honey tokens. The reason I don't call them honey tokens is because they have the same connotation with honey pots, that people start cringing at ever doing them, so I called them something different. So the first one was a domain user called domain admin temp. It had its password in the description and actually was in the domain admin group. Now, when I went and saw this, I was jumping for joy. I was like, yes, I have a domain admin on day 1 of this pen test. A game over. Well, I didn't look at the logon hours because it's not something that you normally look at. But the logon hours were set to 0. So every time I tried to use this domain admin account, it just wouldn't allow it to log in. It said, I forget what it said, but it would just not allow it. So I couldn't do anything with this domain. So I tried using it everywhere. And what was happening was every time I used this account, the organization had a special alert that for this specific account, that every time it tried to log in anywhere, it would send an alert from where I was trying to log in from, or where the user was trying to log in from, and where they were trying to log in to. So I was getting nowhere, and the cert that was after me found me within a few minutes, and all the other boxes that I was trying it from as well. So that really pissed me off. I was really tired of that whole situation. The next one, though, was the biggest kicker of them all. I was pissed. I found a public share called Password Audit 2000 something, and inside of it, I opened the share. I was like, wow. As a normal user, I had access to this. I was like, this organization is stupid. I'm so smart. I win. I'm, king of the world. Well, when I tried to open or download this Excel document, it said access denied. I was like, well, crap. Let me try double-clicking it. It's showing that I have access to this file, but for some reason I can't even open it. I probably double-clicked this thing 400 some odd times. And the security admin, I think, got DDoSed by the number of times I clicked on this thing, because he got an alert every single time someone tried. It made me really pissed. And they caught me. They found exactly where I was coming from, exactly where I was going to, exactly what accounts I was trying with, because I did try with a couple of different accounts, and I was caught. Like, they found all of me, and I got nowhere. The next one's a little bit of an esoteric one, but it was a really funny one, really ingenious method. Someone made a computer account that did nothing. It was just a virtual machine that had MySQL running on it, and it was the only port that was available. And as soon as I saw MySQL running on a Windows box, I knew I was golden. Because normally in specific versions, or at least 1.4.19 and below, I think, the plugin directory for the MySQL install is unprotected. So, and it said backup database. I knew I had to go after that, because that was the website, or that was the computer that had all the backups. So I tried to log in, and it allowed me. It's a success, but it popped me back to my normal prompt. I was like, okay, what the heck's going on? Like, let me try this again. Tried logging in, success, and still nothing. Like, what the heck? Let me try logging into something else. And that was success. At this point, I kind of caught on that this was a honeypot of sorts. And I was like, okay, I'm caught here. Like, shoot, I gotta get out of here. And what the person had done was they set up this VM, and they had actually removed the authentication piece of MySQL, the DLL that did the authentication for MySQL, and so it allowed anyone to log in, which is awesome. And what they had done was made it so that anytime someone tried to log in, it automatically alerted the security admin for it, which was sucky for me, but great for them. Next up was the web developer. This guy pissed me off. He made an htaccess file, and anyone who knows what htaccess files is a file that tells the web server kind of little tweaks or optimizations to do when someone tries to access specific things. So what he had done was made an htaccess file that automatically forwards any common scanner requests, like /nicto, /nesys.html, all these other requests, to custom 402 pages. Now, a 402 page, if you don't know what it is, it's a payment required page. Basically, the web developer was saying, no, you're not going to use a stupid tool on me. Pay me. And he correlated all those alerts automatically, and based on whatever scanner you were using, he would send an alert up to the security admin, and I was caught. It really sucked. It was a bad day. The next one, I find a lot of people don't know about this website. It's getcreditcardnumbers.com, and getcreditcardnumbers.com is not a bad site. It's a site that generates dummy data, dummy credit card data that are completely valid. I mean, not working obviously, but valid in the code way that they are. Credit cards for MasterCard, American Express, all these different ones, and they're used for like creating both DLP solutions as well as just point of sale solutions to test things out with dummy data, and it's great. It's wonderful. The problem is that this one organization thought it was hilarious when they created their database of all of their transactions, and they put one in, like all of their transaction databases were like QRZ25, MR157, and they had all of these codes based on, I think it was the country codes or the transaction types, but they had one called credit cards. So I thought I was hilarious. I got onto the organization. I broke in, got to a bunch of places. I finally found their credit card database. I logged in. I found inside of the organization, inside of the database server, they had all of these different databases, and there's one called credit cards. I instantly logged in, pulled all the credit cards, and jumped out. And I was done. I started writing up the report. When I got to the report time, guess what happened? And I'm sure you can already figure it out. I threw down my report and said, "Hey, I got all your credit cards." They were like, "No, you didn't. You got all the dummy data that we didn't, and we set that up for you just for that fact." So what had happened was that they had put in all this dummy data into this credit card database as a last-ditch effort for any attackers that came in going after their credit cards, that made it so that, the attacker would go after the things that didn't matter versus the things that did. And, well, it worked. It got me. Next one was a VPN main page. So if you've ever heard of or used Juniper Firewall or Juniper VPNs, they have this awesome website that is customizable to anything you want it to look like for the VPN page. Well, this organization had changed that website, the source of the website, not actually the front end of it, but the source of the website, to say the default username and password for this thing is blah, like blah and blah, and blah 123. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, hey, there's a default username and password. I was like, great. I almost tweeted it. I was like, dude, Juniper Firewall or Juniper VPNs has the default creds of X. Well, luckily I didn't do that, and I tried logging in. It was successful, and come to find out that the set of credentials did nothing. You could not log into anything. You had 0 applications that were applied to you, that had 0 web services for you, and it was just a dummy honey token or evil canary. And as soon as someone logged into it, it sent an alert up from the security admin, and the security admin instantly set a block on me. I was like, oh, great, awesome, I'm caught. It sucks. But it was great. So they had actually put that in place intentionally. Next up, so this one's a little hard to explain because there was 2 things going on at once. There was a team doing phishing and a team doing web application stuff. The team doing phishing, it was on my side of things. We got a bunch of credentials but didn't get access. No one actually clicked on the links to give us, the Java applet attack. It didn't work. But they had given us credentials. And the web team was like, hey, I found a place where you can enter credentials in, and we might get code execution at it because it's a /admin/login.html. So we joined forces. We tried all of the email accounts and passwords that we got access to from the phish into this page. And what it actually was a page that was specifically set up to always say successful. It was set up to look like it logs into Active Directory, but really doesn't. What it does is automatically reports any credentials that are sent there to the security admin. And they had put it in a place where it wasn't really caught by automated scanners very often. And you had to actually submit, like you choose from the drop-down, like the domain. If you didn't choose from the drop-down from the domain, it didn't let you submit it. So anything automated didn't really get it. So what they'd done is set a freaking a trap for anyone with user credentials for this organization to log in with their real stolen credentials, and just trap them, and reset the password on those accounts and deny them access, which really sucked. It's really smart, but really sucked. It automatically report the browser and IP information. The next one isn't my story. This was actually a guy that we hired onto our team after he caught us. So he set up a machine that did absolutely nothing except for listened on traffic and said, "Hey, show us anything. Show me anything that hits this thing." And once the scanners that the team that I was working on hit it on 23, the guy guy started tracing it down and found us or found the team within a matter of minutes, or an hour or so, and even down to the room they were in, and they were caught. So it's a great story, and we hired the guy, so it's awesome. One more thing before I go. We've talked about all of these awesome protections and crowdsourcing and evil canaries and stuff. But the one thing that I don't see anyone talking about is the help desk. 9 times out of 10, your help desk knows about phishing attacks way before the security guys do. Even days before the security guys do, or weeks before. If you're not talking to your help desk, you're losing out on one of your critical pieces of security infrastructure. So start talking to them, start getting in the conversation of it. Your Lance James, you just became part of the presentation. All right, so stop leaving them out of the loop. All right, that's me. That's the end of the talk. So I'm Rob Fuller. You can hit me up at room362.com. Also, check out the pwnwiki.io. It's a great resource that a group of smart individuals have put together. I started the group, but everyone else has taken off and done really great things with it. And you can email mubix@hack5.org if you have any questions. Thank you very much. There's some appendixes. I'm going to leave those for you guys to go through, but that's it for the day. Thank you very much, and we will talk to you another time. Bye.